קהל קדוש, בוקר אור, מסכת זבחים, דף צדיק ב' עמוד א', 92A1, דף יומי. Says the Mishnah, דם חטאת שניתז על הבגד. When a person has blood of a chatat, which comes and was sprinkled on a beged. Remember, we're on the new Mishnah, new chapter, chapter 11, okay, of the new perek of Zevachim, right? The more chapters, the better it is, yeah? Dam chatat, shenitaz ala beged. When you have blood of a chatat, which is sprinkled on top of a clothing, right? Harezet taun kibus, so you have to come and you have to wash the clothing. Because it says in the pasuk, "Vasher yizeh midamar habeged, asher yizeh aleh techabes b'makom kadosh." Af al pi she'ena katuv medaber ela b'nechalot. That means even though we're talking about only the chataot which are eaten, shneimar, but it says in the pasuk, b'makom kadosh te'achel. Echad ha'nechalot ve'echad ha'pnimiyot. Doesn't matter whether it's the inner ones or the outer ones. Teunot kibus, meaning the second that you have the blood coming, right? You're going to come and you're going to wash it. Shneimar, but it says in the pasuk, Torat ha'chatat. Torah achat lechol hachataot, meaning all the chataot selamshos. All of them have the same halacha, whether it's the inner ones, the outer ones. Remember, some chataot are brought on the inside of the Bet HaMikdash, of the Bet HaMikdash. Some of them are going to be brought on the outside. Chatat pesula, when it's going to be a chatat pesula, en damat tamun kibus. So therefore, let's say you have a chatat pesula, that now the blood came and sprinkled on someone. So you don't have to wash your clothing. Ben shaitala shat kosher, doesn't matter whether it did have a shat kosher or whether it did not have a shat hakosher. Ezohi shaitala shat kosher. What's the case now that it has shat kosher? Shelana v'shenitmea v'sheyatza. Right? These cases, whether it's lan, lina, tameh, or yatza. Remember that when you have a chatat that's leftover means lina, it stayed the night, and before doing the sprinkling of the blood. Or nitmea, becomes tameh. Or yatza, it comes outside of the azara. So in any of these three cases, what happens is that it's going to be, in any of these three cases, it's going to be the hayala shata kosher. Which one does not have a shata kosher? If it was done shchita outside of the zman and outside of the place, right? And also the same halacha would apply. Shekiblu psulin et zama, right? If right now people which were pasul came and they accepted the blood, okay, which means that it was never kosher on the mizbeach. Remember, from the Kabbalat Adam onwards, it's only going to be kosher if it's done by a kohen. So says the Gemara, Dam chatat shenitaz. We just said right now when you have blood of a chatat, right? Dam of a chatat shenitaz that was going to be sprinkled on the beged. Ve'i torah achat lechol chataot. Now if you're going to tell me now we're talking about torah achat of all the chataot, afilu chatataof nami. So even chatataof, it's also going to be the same thing. So alama tanya. So why do we learn in the Braita, right? Yachol te dam chatata of taun kibus, right? So why does he say then that it should be the dam chatata of should require kibus? So Talmud Umar, so it comes to teach you zot. When it says zot torat chatat, when it says zot torat chatat, it's coming to be ma'et chatata of. So Amar Shakish mishum bar kapara says Shakish in the name of bar kapara. Amar Kra, the pasuk says tishachet. Right? We're talking about nishchatot kedu meduber. We're talking about where it was already done the shchita, which means when it says zot, it's coming to teach you a din that it's only in these ones which are chatat ha'of, which were not nishchata, but they were killed through melika. Remember, how do you kill a bird in the Bet HaMikdash? Through melika. Melika means you don't do shchita with the nail. The ema b'achalot kedu meduber. So he says maybe we're talking about really be'emet, the ones which are eaten. Kedichti b'makom kadosh te'achel. But we're not talking about the ones which go inside the Bet HaMikdash, right? Inside, whenever I say here inside Bet HaMikdash, I mean inside the Eichal, right? That's what I mean, right? So he says, Rebbe Rachmana Torah. He comes and he says, Rebbe, when we're talking about now, he's adding it in from the Torah Chatat. So he says, Yihachi, if so, Hafilu Chatat of Nami. So then also the Chatat of should be the same lacha. So he says, no, when it says Zot, it's coming to exclude Chatat. So he says, Umaraita, why do I say that? Why am I coming and saying that it's including the Chataot which go inside and it's including the Chataot of? So he says, Mistabra de Chatat behema pnimi tavalei liribuye. It's much more probable to include a Chatat of a behema pnimit, sheken behema shchitata betzafon. The Kabbalah Kli, right? And you need the Kabbalah Kli, vekeren, ve'etzba, right? Bechuda ve'ishim. Look how many things which are comparable. When you have the Chatat which is outside and the Chatat which is inside, how many comparables do you have? Remember, whenever we're talking about it in the Gemara, many times we talk about comparables. So how much is it going to be comparables? You have, right, shchitato b'tzafon, right? The shchita is done in the north. You have Kabbalah has to be done with a keli, right? It has to be done with a utensil. You have Tzadik Bet Amubed 92b. It has to be done on the keren of the Mizbeach. You have to sprinkle it on the corner of the Mizbeach. You have to do it through the etzba, right? You have to do a chudash shel keren, which is on the point of the keren, right? V'yishim, and on the fire. So says the Gemara, Adarab, the opposite. Chatat ha'of, I should have included it. Sheken chutz kimota, ve'achila kimota. He says, first of all, the chutz is like the pnim, and the achila is like, which means like this. The chatat of the behemah on the outside is like a chatat ha'of, that they're both eaten. The chataot pnimiot are not eaten at all. So therefore, that's why I'm going to compare it more. So says the Gemara, Bahanach nefishan, which one's more? How many comparables did you have between the chataot pnimiot and chataot chitzoniot? You had much more than just the chataot ha'of and the chatat of the bechutz. So says the Gemara, Rav Yosef Amar. Rav Yosef comes and he says, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, Yochelena. What does it mean now, Yochelena? That you're going to come and you're going to eat it, right? Yochelena lezo velo laacheret. He says you're going to eat it, yochalota, to this one. We're talking about the chatat, which is going to be eaten. Velo laacheret, not the other one. So here we're talking about, obviously, there's coming to exclude the nechalot, which is going to be the chatat ha'of. So he says, velazot lamali. So why do I have then the word vizot, right? So he says, ilav zot. If it didn't have the word zot, havamina, I would have thought to say, when it says yochelena, orche dekra. That's just like the regular part of the way that the Torah is talking about, right? Which means, when it says yochelena, it just means that you're going to eat it, but it's not like coming to exclude anything. Tamashmalan, when it now says zot, right? So it says zot yochelena, so that means you're going to come and say, this one you're going to eat. Mashma, that there's another one that you're not going to eat. Okay, when you said zot yochelena. So Rabba comes and he says, right? Amar Akra, the pasuk says, Asher yizeh bin nazaot katuv medaber. When it says the word Asher yizeh, right? It's talking about benizaot. What does it mean nizaot? The ones which are going to have a lashon of haza'ah. Because he says the chatot pnimiot. He comes and he says, so when it says now the word torat, the pashut, it's pashut that we cannot be doresh the miut for chatot pnimiot. We're talking about nechalot, which are eaten. Which are the ones that are eaten? Remember, either chataot on the outside, chitzoniot, or chatataof. So he says, linyan merika u'shtifa, to do with the merika u'shtifa, to do with the kli matechet, he says that's talking about kol zachar b'kohanim yochal otah. But to do with kibus, it says asher yizeh. What does it mean asher yizeh? It means that we're talking about, right, asher yizeh, that it's going to be that you're going to sprinkle it. If so, he says zechad nechalot ve'echad pnimiot, echad pnimiot ve'echad nechalot mibayle. He says, why are you telling me now the ones which are going to be eaten and the ones which are going to be in the inner ones? It should be the ones which are the inner ones and the ones which are going to be eaten. So he says, you're right. You first have to teach echad pnimiot and then ve'echad nechalot. So he says, what about the chatat ha'of? Because at the end of the day, chatat ha'of also should need it because it says v'yizami dama chatat mizbeach. So he says, miet rachmana zot. The word v'zot comes to exclude it. If so, so also the outer one also should be coming to exclude it, right? So he says, torat. When it says torat, it's coming to include it. So maraita, why are you coming to be marbe the chatat chitzona and to be ma'et the chatat ha'of? Meaning like this: if we're learning everything from the inner chatat, so now beforehand we were learning everything from the outer chatat, and then we went and we said we're learning the inner chatat from the outer chatat, and we're not learning the chatat ha'of. The chatat ha'of, yeah. So he comes down and he says like this. He says, however, though, what's going to happen in a case where you're doing the opposite? I'm learning from the inner one. And now I want to compare the outer chatat to the inner chatat. What about the chatat ha'of? So he says again, right, with zot, I'm coming to exclude. So he says, why do you want to exclude? Right? Why do you want to exclude the chatat ha'of? Maybe I want to exclude the chatat chitzonit. So he says, mistabra, chatat behema v'le rebuye. I'm going to compare the chatat behema and not the chatat ha'of. Why? Sheken behema shchitat tzafon kabbalat kli ve'etzva v'chuda v'yishim. Let's say what we mentioned before. The comparables. How many comparables are there between the chataot of the behema? So he says, even though one is on the inside and one is on the outside, they have all these comparables. Shchitat tzafon, kabbalat kli, right? Keren, right? The etzba, the chuda v'yishim. Look how many you have. He says, Adrab, the opposite, chatat ha'of also have a little buye. Sheken hazal kimotay, you have hazal just like it. So he answers the Gemara, they're going to come and sprinkle it with a finger. So he says, Hanach nefishani. Comes and he says, right, these ones are going to be more. Meaning that when we're talking about comparables, how many comparables do you have between the chatat chitzonit and chatat penimit? You have much more than the chatat penimit and the chatat ha'ov. Says the Gemara, by Rabbi Avin comes and he asks the following question: Chatat ha'ov sheichnis dama betzavara. What happens right now if you have chatat ha'ov that you come and you're going to bring in the blood when it's still in the tzavar? Meaning between the melika and the sprinkling of the blood, you brought it inside of the betam, inside of the echal. What happens now? What is the halacha? Does it become pasul or not? Remember one more time, we said that if you take a chatat and you took the blood inside, it becomes pasul. Correct? Bayesh tisaref. Now the question is, what about the chatat auf? Right? One more time, you come and you do melika. Now you're supposed to sprinkle the blood on the mizbeach. You didn't do that. You went right away and you put it inside the echal. What happens now? So, says the Gemara, Tzavara ke kli sharet dami. Do I say that the tzavar is like a kli sharet and then it becomes pasul? Or dinar, maybe it's like a tzavar behema, right? Midama marachmana velo besara. That it has to be from the blood and not the basar. Here you have the basar. Usually when we were talking about the blood, we were talking about the blood of the animal. There's no basar. There's just the blood. Here, the actual, everything is there. You just did the melika, and now you come and you bring it inside to the hechal. So, we don't know. So Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof now. And he says like this. He says, Pirkesa. What happens right now if you do the chatat ha'of, you do the melika, and all of a sudden, Pirkesa, the animal starts jumping around, right, before the azat adam. V'nichnesa lifnim, and it goes inside. V'chazra, and then it comes outside. Keshera, is it going to be kosher or not? Hayichnisa psula, right? If it's bring it in. See. Yeah. So he says, Ha'ichnisa psula. So it's mashma only because it went in and it came out, that's what's going to be kosher. But if you brought it in, it's going to be pasul. Right? So says the Gemara, according to your reasoning, right? When it says Gabe Kodshe Kadashim, Tiktani, where it says Pirkesa Yatza v'ledarom, v'chazra keshera. So when it says Pirkesa, it came out to the darom, to the south, right? And then chazra, it's going to be kosher. So he says, Ha'otzia psula. It's mashma if you took it out, it's going to be pasul. Elahai, he says, we needed the chidush of that it's going to come on the outside. He says, so to here, so by Rabbi Avin comes and he asks the following question, if right now it's spilled on the floor and then you gathered it, what's halacha? Is the dam kosher to sprinkle it or not? You remember we spoke about this to do with the animal. So now we're talking about now, right, to do with the tzavar of the chatat ha'of. So do you say that you don't need a kli sharet, and therefore it's going to be kosher? Or dilma mifsal pasul berachmana kli sharet. He says it's going to be pasul and kli sharet. Pasul. Meaning like this. Usually by an animal, if you remember, we said if the animal comes, they do the shchita and it spills on the floor, you can't collect it anymore. Because once it's on the floor, kaddish. However, though, here it was never supposed to be put in a utensil directly from the blood, right, directly from the head of the thing, you're going to come and you're going to sprinkling it. So therefore, do we say that ki'ilu, that if it fell on the floor and now you gathered it, it's still going to be kosher, but you didn't need a kli sharet, or you're going to say no, that it would become pasul and kli sharet? So says the Gemara, Rava says, Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. Yachol yedam chatat ha'of tam kibus. I would have thought to say that if you have dam chatat ha'of that comes and sprinkles on a kohen, that he has to wash his clothing, tamulomar zot. If you're going to tell me now mifsal pasil berachmana that it becomes pasul, tepuk ledav sile beavir kli becomes pasul and avir kli. He says no, you put the kli directly to the tzavar, and once you put a kli directly to the tzavar, the blood is not going to come la'avir of the beged before it goes onto the actual keli. So by mine Levi, so Levi comes and he asks from Rebbe, right? Nitaz mi beged lebeged. What happens if it's going to go from one clothing to another clothing? What's halacha? Do you also need to wash the second clothing or not? The first clothing, okay, fine, you just said yes. But what about the second clothing? So beged kama idchelele kibus. Are you going to tell me now that the first one was nidchemi kibus, which means, right, that we already just said that the beged rishon is going to be chayav in kibus. So therefore, obviously, or do you say that no? Or dilmanor, maybe you say that that's it. It's already too far away that you don't need to do the kibus on the second clothing. So Amalei, he says, zo she'ela ta'un kibus, right? Mimanashach. He says, this is a she'ela. This is a very good question. Why? The second clothing needs a kibus mimanashach. He says, why? Ios fo vekasher. If it's going to be that you collected it and it's going to be kasher, hakasher, so then it's going to be kosher. Chazak baruch. It's still kosher for the hazah, right? He says, v'yos fo pasul. Now, if you're going to tell me that you gathered it together, it's going to be pasul, Anak Rebbe Kiva's file. We all like Rebbe Kiva that he says, Haitala Shat kosher, if it was kosher once, and then it became pasul, Tamat Taun Kibus, you still have to come and wash the clothing. So therefore, Mimanashach, you need it. And then we're going to continue with another question.